Thank you for being here tonight to spend the next hour together, exploring the mind, to understand the mind a little more. It's a journey we need to do together. That's to observe the mind. Because that's the only way we can do. You can't simply listen to what I said to understand yourself. You have to observe it. How to observe? It might be a question for many people. How to observe? Because for most people, most of us, they have got used to observing things through the prism of thoughts, ideas, opinions, through the prism of the all kinds of ideologies. Even it's the same verb, observe, but it's not observance at all, right? Nothing to do with observance. It's only kind of a replay, reproduce from the old ideas, the thoughts, whatever. To observe mind, it must take place now. At each minute, each moment. To just see the mind, to notice the activities. There's no judgment. There's no condemnation. And there's no justification. People's mind is so cunning. They can justify anything. That's crazy, isn't it? But to observe means there's no such thing at all. Just see it. Just like we just look at the tree outside. Just look at the tree. I don't need to know the name of the tree. I don't need to know any biological knowledge about that tree. The moment I was thinking about the knowledge related to this tree, I was not looking at the tree, right? So the true observance needs no thought. Because thoughts only pop in as the filter between me and the tree. Between me, which is also empty stuff as well, right? I mean the body, the me, not the the self, that kind of stuff. I mean the body and the tree. It's same for observing the mind. To look at the mind without any thoughts. Which means that when we look at the mind, there's no subject, there's no observer, because the observer is also some thoughts, right? The self, so to speak, which is the accumulation of all kinds of thoughts, ideas, labels, mental images, and prestige, positions, welfare. You can name it. That's the self. It's a bundle of thoughts and ideas. When we look at the mind with such an identity, the me, the self, it's not observing at all, because we are still in the domain of thoughts to interpret by the inclination of the me, by the tendency of the me, which must be biased. So to observe mind means that we observe mind, no observer. Because the observer is also part of the observed. that's a very important point we need to get into. That's that the observer is a part of the observed. Or maybe the observer is just the observed. Right? The observer is the self, is the me. What is the me? What is the consciousness? Isn't the me the whole content of consciousness? Me is the content of the consciousness. The whole content of the consciousness is me. So to observe the mind is to observe the content of the consciousness. Therefore, the observer is the observed. So the question comes, is that a kind of observance which is not in thoughts at all? This question is very, very related to our discussion, right? Can observance take place beyond the thought? I don't think you are waiting for me to answer it, right? I think we all have the answer already, right? Yes. That's where the awareness comes in. There is an observance beyond the thought, which is called to be aware of the mental activities on the mind, which is the content of the consciousness, which is the me, the self. Of course, includes the ego, right? And more. So to meditate is to observe. To observe is to understand. To understand is to learn, which has to take place at each moment. Because you are alive. The self, the me, is alive. You have to learn about it at each moment. Or else the knowledge comes in, which is always old. The me is always fresh, always new at each moment, isn't it? That's why to observe, one has to let go all the knowledge. Well, it does not mean that you forget knowledge. To survive in this society, there must be a place for knowledge. But psychologically, there's no place for knowledge. Because the self is always fresh at each moment, so changeable, so unpredictable. You have to observe it at each moment. Of course, when you observe it, there's no observer. Or else, this becomes the endeavor, the effort, which is part of me, to be observed, to be able to observe all the time, which creates the contradiction itself, right? observe without being an observer. You see how tricky the language is. Because our language is designed, especially English, the Western languages, is designed to emphasize the me, the I. So, for the knowledge itself, we don't deny it. We don't say you shouldn't learn any knowledge because knowledge is not helpful. We don't say that, but to look at it psychologically, and there's no place for knowledge to work on. The moment you introduce knowledge into your mind, you begin to distort the understanding of yourself when you look at yourself through the knowledge, which is always old, and you are always new. So that's why we always say to meditate is to be present, to learn about yourself at each minute, each moment, without being an observer. Which means that you have this awareness. To notice that you are not aware of something. When you are not aware of something, the self, the mind, the awareness comes back. This whole process of it is meditation. So before we start today's discussion, well, maybe it's a little long to see that we only start the session, but still, it's still at the beginning of the session. Today we try to use the different ways to interact. So if you want to speak or just want to ask or just want to propose a question to discuss, you can scan the QR code on the screen here, on the screen here, and via this link you can share your video and audio, and of course your audio will appear in the stream, so we can talk and people can hear us. But if you don't want that, you can still leave a message in the chat box. All right. So before we continue the session, please sit with me. Let's be silent for 3 or 4 minutes to empty the mind, to come back this moment. And then we can continue the discussion. Today, let's talk about security. This keyword, security. Or seeking security in all kinds of ways. All kinds of subtle ways, even. The very seeking of security lays the foundation of the violence of human beings on all levels. How come? Why do we relate seeking security with violence? What is violence? What is violence? If someone beats another one, kills another one, it's atrocity, right? It's, of course, violence. This kind of killing still happens on the other corners of this planet, many places, war. It might not happen so often here, in this peaceful country. But can we say there's no violence here at all? The violent behaviors must come from the violent mind. But the violent mind might not present or show the violent behaviors due to all kinds of laws, rules, whatever. There's no violence. There's not so many across society. But can we say that our mind is also free from the violence? Look at the daily life we are living. All kinds of aggressions. Microaggressions, even bigger ones. All kinds of quarrels, all kinds of dehumanized behaviors, intimidations, you name it. The mind never stops being violent. We have to realize that we are all contributing to the violence in all kinds of ways. We are seeking security in all kinds of ways. That very action to seek which is a psychological action, a mental action, which must be in the domain of thoughts. that very seeking. No matter you are seeking pleasure or seeking security or seeking comfort, the way to seek, as we said before, is in the domain of thoughts, must inevitably create conflict. The mental conflicts is the violence, is it? Even a very tiny one is a violence. The accumulation of this kind of tiny mental conflicts may eventually lead to the very violent behaviors. That's why in the Chinese ancient stories, it is always emphasized that to read the people's mind first, because the violence always starts long before the violent behavior appears. Each mental conflict is the violence, is the form of the violence. And the very, very way to seek leads to the conflicts. Because, as just we said before, maybe it's the third time, just in the past 5 minutes, to seek something is always in the domain of thoughts. Why people seek certainty? Why people seek security? In the thoughts, when people seek something like the pleasure, seek something certain, something secure, it is a manifestation of fear, is it? Fear. People are driven by fear to seek in the hope of eradicating the fear. So we can say fear, the psychological fear, is the foundation of the violence. When people is in fear, people just seek something secure in the hope of getting a sense of security. Have you observed it? It's purely in the domain of game, in the domain of thoughts, which is a game. It's like a dog is keep chasing his tail for security. Where does fear come from? What is fear? It seems that there are two types of fear, right? The physical fear, when someone confronts a tiger in the forest, in the jungle. But there's another kind of fear, which is the psychological fear, which is almost everybody is going through in their life, in different forms: anxiety, worry, anger, jealousy, hatred. Let's examine the psychological fear. When we understand the psychological fear, one understand the physical fear naturally, but the other way around doesn't work. We can't reduce the physical fear back to the psychological one, which is in the domain of thoughts. Let's examine the mind, look at it. Can we observe that thoughts breed fear? Fear is the reaction to thoughts. When we find some thoughts which give us fear, then we want to seek pleasure or seek security from another set of thoughts. We hope that thoughts can be triggered by something, in this society structure. Like for some people, maybe a permanent job, though everything is impermanent. Or somebody want to have a higher position in the society, in the hope that this kind of high position can trigger some thoughts to make him or her feel secure. But actually, in reality, when he or she reaches that position, it's a different story at all, right? Because the reality is always different from thoughts. The thoughts being in a position and being in position is different. So one is caught up in this game of thoughts. From some thoughts, one derives some fear and try to seek security in other thoughts, which leads to one to have all kinds of crazy behaviors, unviolent behaviors. That's most people's daily existence, is it? You're alive with a constant battle. A life that chase oneself and everyone else. Because no matter how hard one seeks security, the stark reality is that there's no security in thought at all. Is it? There's no security in thoughts. because I was stable. Thoughts are always changeable. How can you derive security from something always changing, something fixed? That's why we have the attachment to thoughts in the hope of fixing it. But you know the feeling of the attachment. A new level of disturbance, turbulence. This is our funny life. Most people's life. It's so funny. If you observe it, this is one of the most hilarious drama in life. Very hilarious, is it? In thoughts, we want to achieve something impossible. Of course, that impossibility only deny you. The consequence of being denied is disappointment, frustration, self-doubt, you name it. So now, it's time to empty the mind. Empty the consciousness, the whole content of it. To purify it. You might have noticed that how easy the consciousness is polluted in your daily life. All kinds of influences. Not only from the media, but also from people around you. Of course, this not should be an excuse for you not to talk to them. But we just observe it, right? Just notice this kind of influences when we are not aware of that. It's time to empty the mind, right? Seriously, I mean now. Let's do it now. In the next 10 minutes, following the audio guide, let's meditate to empty the consciousness. And then let's come back for the final part of the discussion. Now, let's take a 10-minute meditation. Start by taking a moment to find a comfortable position to sit in a posture that you feel relaxed and get alert. Let hands rest on your knees or laps. Let the eyes close gently. Soften your forehead. Act a soft smile in the corner of your lips. Breathe naturally. As you breathe in, be aware that you are breathing in. Feel the sensation of breathing in. The region can be the nostrils, can be the belly, can be anywhere. Focus on the part you feel most. As you breathe out, be aware that you are breathing out. Feel the sensation of breathing out. The region can be the nostrils, can be the belly, can be anywhere. Focus on the part you feel most. Fix your attention on the breath. Let go of any thought, words, images. This moment, nothing is more important than breath. While you are listening to the bell, check where your attention is. If it wasn't on the breath, after the bell, gently invite your attention back to the breath and sustain your attention on the breath. Slowly, bring your awareness back to this room. Feel into your body. Wiggle your fingers and toes. When you are ready, open your eyes. Hope we have come down a little bit after such a long time of hot exploration of the mind. So, by our observance, by understanding the whole structure of the thoughts, there's no possibility to create order in thoughts. The conflicts, all kinds of violent issues, is all in the domain of thoughts. That's why we let go of the thoughts to empty the mind. Now it's another misunderstanding of the language, right? When we say empty, it seems that it's a verb. We can open the brain and just empty everything immediately. What is empty? How to understand of empty? Empty the mind means seeing clearly the truth, the whole structure of thoughts, and the hopeless situation because of thoughts. That very way to see it clearly is to empty. And that very seeing only takes place at each moment. If you see now, it works on you now. It's not forever. Seeing is always at present, which is learning, which is also taking actions. So we can see seeing is acting. The very seeing leads to your action. That's to empty the consciousness. You know that you are playing a game in the society, but that game is not inside you. not inside your mind. The mind has to be in a place which is bodiless, which is infinitive. When the mind is in that state, there's a possibility for one to approach and touch the truth. That's why we need to have this awareness. All the time. Of course, in the future sessions, we need to dedicate one session to explain, to look at what is awareness, which is another big topic. But for now, simply put, with the awareness, we are seeing the truth, the facts. And that very thing frees the mind from the chaos of the thoughts. All right, I think that's the basic content of today's session. It's 1 hour. I think we shouldn't talk too much, else the content can be a little overwhelming. So now it's time for open discussion. If any of us now who is watching the YouTube live, if you want to speak, you can just join the link. I can put this link into the chat if you want to share your audio and or optional the video via the stream. Let me check. Yeah, this one. If any of us want to speak something, you can either use this link or just simply leave a message in the live chat. You're welcome. I don't know how to pronounce name. Umberto or Umberto. Thank you for the message. So if any of us who want to suggest a new topic which want to be discussed in the future sessions, you can just send me an email or just leave a message on the meetup, so we can arrange such a session in the future to discuss that specific topic. So because this session is meditation, which means that we can talk about anything in life. And hopefully by this exploration together, you observe your mind, eye observance, we can reach that clarity of the life. Great. I think that's all for today's session. And thank you for Aaron being here tonight to spend the last hour also being together to fix that technical issue at the beginning of the session. And hope we can continue this together, explore the mind to spread the truth with more people. Oh, thank you, Wang Xuan and Bob and Umberto, the message in the chat. Let's see you sessions, and all the best for you in the coming weeks. Enjoy each day and take care. Bye bye, everybody. See you in the future.